Debanking Christians. 15 U.S. state officials, financial officials, warned that Bank of America is canceling the accounts of Christians and Christian organizations. The officials wrote a letter to Bank of America demanding action. Here to discuss the alleged infringement on civil liberties is the executive director at Consumers Research, Will Hild. Will Hild, thank you so much for joining us. What's happening at Bank of America?
That's a great question. This company is increasingly politicizing the way it engages in the banking industry. So we've seen in the past, our organization ran a six-figure ad campaign against Bank of America for the ways they were using their loan portfolio to attack things like the agricultural industry, cattle, Second Amendment rights. What we've seen more recently is that they are straight up debanking people and companies that they don't politically support. And this is an alarming escalation in what we see as a sort of a battle over the financial services industry.
What could be done about this kind of thing?
Well, I think this letter from these attorneys generals is a huge first step in the right direction. The first thing is that elected officials need to get very serious about punishing banks that engage in this. Banking is regulated both at the national and the state level. So state elected leaders absolutely have a role in this. And then at the federal level, we have to decide, is this a country we want to live in where if you don't have the right political opinions, your bank gets rid of you? And banking is effectively, it's up there with the U.S. Postal Service in terms of being a public good. When you look at the 5 or 6 different agencies that regulate banking and tell them what they can and cannot do, it's a quasi-governmental service to begin with. So I think saying that, listen, we're not going to allow, just like we wouldn't allow racial discrimination or sex-based discrimination in banking, we shouldn't allow viewpoint or religious discrimination either.
Yeah, and you're talking about viewpoint discrimination. This letter from these financial officials was saying that Bank of America scored low on this viewpoint diversity score. I guess they got 8 out of 100. What is this score, and what does that indicate, their low score?
Yeah, well, this score is, I think, put on by a group called the 1792 Project that scores organizations that basically where they have a risk level for engaging in this kind of discrimination against their customers. And unfortunately, as I noted previously, Bank of America has a long history of engaging in discrimination against basically conservative viewpoints. And it's not just Christians, it's also, gun manufacturers, gun dealers, people engaged in agribusiness. This is a bank, by the way, that has signed on to the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, saying that they will use their loan portfolio to push agricultural businesses to net zero, which is going to incredibly increase prices for consumers and restrict the supply of things like meat in your grocery store. So this is a bank with a fervent ideological bent to the way that they both use their loan portfolio, but also whether they will allow people to even make deposits at the bank.
And you're talking about this ideological bend. Explain that more.
Well, like I said, they view their role not just in providing services, banking, the normal kind of deposit and check issuing services that an average consumer would use, but also their loan portfolio, meaning that the financing that they do to certain industries like oil and gas, coal, agricultural. They view that not in a sense of, hey, how can we serve our customers the best to make the most money? They have a political agenda that they try to accomplish with that. So they try to kick off people from their services that they don't agree with, and they try to restrict their loans and put restrictions on their loans that push people or certain industries to act in a certain way. So namely net zero, this idea that we're going to get to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. They've basically made a commitment to the United Nations Glasgow Alliance for Net Zero that they will use their loan portfolio not to make money, but to push this political agenda.